reach out to people and say, I'm doing an exercise. I value your feedback. What are the first 3 words you'd use to describe me? Or
Mm,
working with me, if it's a young adult or
mm,
in a career, that you describe
mm-hmm,
me. And so what you do is you get data from outside people about how they see
mm-hmm,
you.
mm-hmm,
And so all
mm-hmm.
this data, right? Like your strengths, your values, what people say about working with you. That's all a way that we can help you to visually see it, because you can't like embody it, because our brains our brains are wired to ignore the things we're good at and emphasize the things we're not good at, because we forget that the things that we're uniquely good at other people aren't, and so we minimize them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
my goal is to pull out and help people to see the things that they're uniquely good at so that they can anchor in those.
Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. So excited to have with me today Jaime Diglio, who is just super awesome. And I'll, of course, read her bio in a second. But the major reason I wanted to have her on is that she is really going to help young adults, which means she's going to help, of course, the parents listening figure out how to play a helpful role in supporting but not hovering over your young adult as they enter their career. So welcome, Jaime. So happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just give a little quick, brief overview of who Jaime is, because she's amazing and has just such a wealth of information and is going to obviously drop so many golden nuggets for everybody listening today. So Jaime teaches people how to master the new ROI, which is the return on interactions, because in the age of AI, your competitive advantage is not more tech, but your ability to communicate and connect in every conversation. She's the CEO of the Win Room. She equips leaders, sellers, and teams with practical science-backed tools to measure and improve how they connect with themselves, their teams, their clients, and their kids. She's a TEDx speaker, author of Moneyball Leadership, and entrepreneurship sales coach at Harvard. She's a top performer, leader, and seller at Gartner and Microsoft for 15 years before starting her business. She's also a proud mom of a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. So she'll be able to share some crash and burn stories with us as well, right? Myself as well. And that gives her obviously a front row seat to the real life reps of listening, boundaries, and trust. So a lot of her programs serve young adults, college students, early career professionals, helping them build confidence, executive presence, and communication skills that last. So what a perfect, right, background to be able to help all the listeners here help their kiddos navigate this crazy early career.
Yeah.
And I think a place to maybe start is where we were just talking offline is what are some of the just maybe thinking errors that a lot of young people are putting out right now, or
Yeah.
some of the self-limiting beliefs that you're really hearing that really are kind of getting in their way and preventing them from taking that first step into their career.
Yes, I know. And it's so funny. Like, I tweaked that bio a little bit because I knew I was meeting with you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, 15 and 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's start this out by like, I do not have it all figured out. None of us do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the point. But I do work with a lot of work with a lot of um, early career professionals, also with kids in college. And I think I was actually just with a whole group of college seniors the other day, and the message that I was kept instilling to them is like there's no perfect way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
As like to real isn't perfect, perfect isn't real, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
meant to know exactly what you're supposed to do right now. And most of us, and I think we joked about this, is like I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this is a
Mm-hmm.
challenge that it's not just for young people, but older people as well. But I think, yeah, there's this misconception that you have to have it all figured out, and a big part of that is because we see so much on social media. We see everybody winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
see on social media, you see the highlight reel, not the real reel. And so what that
Mm-hmm.
does is that's compounded sort of self-doubt, head trash about, well, they've got the promotion, they've got this, they're doing all these things, they look like they're doing amazing. But the reality is like that's not real. And so to a little less feeling like you have to have it all figured out and looking at it is, I talk about it as like practice. So we're all
Sure.
just
Yep.
practicing all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm practicing right here with you. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when we look at it that way, as terms of like we get the first job, we're figuring out what we like, what we don't like. It's really like in just it's an experiment of you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, how does it fit? You're trying it on, and then you're going, I like this. I want to keep going. So I just think that then this immediacy as well that young people now have, like they get everything as soon as they want it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas all of
Mm-hmm.
us, we had to wait, right? We had to
Mm-hmm.
stay in the grind, and it wasn't an
Mm-hmm.
immediate an
Mm-hmm.
immediate thing. So I think a big part of that too is just how they're all wired to
Mm-hmm.
immediately get that instant gratification and that quick high of, yeah, I
Yeah.
achieved it, and then now the next, and then the next, and the next. So
Yeah.
how to slow that down?
I think there's so much in there. I like of course, there's technical, tactical, if you will, that we'll get into, and tips and strategies and things that, you offer folks. But what I hear in there is you're just trying to like disarm this whole process, right? And bring everyone down. So if they're like anxiety baseline is up here, like how do we just
Mhm.
bring it here? Because if they're allowing fear to run roughshod all over their story, they're obviously not going to take that first step.
Right.
And then I hear in there that you're seeing a lot of young people kind of have a perfectionistic perspective on, or a rigidity around what is that first step or what is that
Mhm.
thing. And I agree. I mean, I think, oh my God, if I had, it's interesting. I was actually, on one hand, I feel like was talking to my son the other day about, like, I was like, bro, like I didn't listen to a podcast. Like my parents weren't like sending me some Instagram clip of some motivational speaker or some like thing, or Gary V or whatever that is, And on one hand, there's a loss there, but I also think there's like a freedom in that. Like, at
Mhm.
least in my experience, like my parents, like it was like whatever, like like
Yeah.
go do you kind of thing. And of course, there's a missing piece on the coaching side. But I do think, like you said, the piece you made, the point you made about exposure.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of exposure, and you're right. You're seeing some person live in some penthouse in Miami with Bugatti, and I'm supposed to reverse engineer
Right.
every little step. So how do you kind of, in addition to disarming it, what's a helpful place for someone to even think about where to begin, or their
Yeah.
next right action? Where do you start there?
Yeah. And it's interesting. So the way I share this, and this is what I shared with these students the other day, um, is that like we all live in two rooms in our heads
Mm,
all the time.
mm,
And on one side, where we end up, where lots of these young people are, whether they're aware of it or not, they're stuck in what I call the war room. And
mm,
the war room is where we work against results. It's where we doubt ourselves,
mm-hmm,
we self-sabotage, we focus on our
mm-hmm,
weaknesses, all the things
mm-hmm,
that we're not doing well in. And our brains are wired. You know this because this is
mm-hmm,
your
mm-hmm,
specialty. But our
mm-hmm,
brains are wired in worry. And
mm-hmm,
that's how we are just naturally made as humans. But now, with the compounded effect of all the social media, all this fear-based
mm-hmm.
stuff, we sit in this war room of self-doubt. And like we have some of the statistics that are out there are just crazy. And they go back and forth with with exact, but this is what I typically say is like we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. Up
Mm,
to 80% of them are negative.
mm,
Up to 80% of them are negative. And if about 90 to 95% of the thoughts that we have yesterday, we have today. So we're
mm.
in these like patterns of just
Sure,
like cycle thinking
sure.
of negativity, and we don't even know we're in them. And like we always say this, right? Like how do we talk to ourselves? How we talk to ourselves, we would never talk
Mm-hmm,
to our friends this way.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the key, which I, with teaching with these young people, and I teach it with adults as well, is sort of you have to notice your war words.
Right.
What are those things you keep telling yourself? Mine as a kid was like, I'm not smart enough. You
Mm-hmm,
always have this thing like, well, maybe I'm not smart enough, right?
mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm,
we're so comfortable in this war room,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and it limits us from like it puts us in fear and like doesn't let us be free, right? We want to be in
Sure.
freedom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the reason why my company's called the Win Room is because On the other side, you got the war room here. On the other side, though, is this whole other space, which I call our win room. And it's where we focus on what I need. It's where we're clear in our goals, our values, our the direction we want to go in. Who do we want to become? And why so many young adults and people in general get stuck here is because they actually have not defined what their win room is. So that
Mm-hmm.
whole point is like putting it out there and like writing it
Mm-hmm.
down of like what,
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that are holding me back? What are the things,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like goals like 101,
Sure.
but
Sure.
being very specific because every one of these young adults that will say that they're dissatisfied with where they are, and you say, okay, well, what would satisfaction be? What would make you happy? They don't know.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so helping to help them define that, and this is a parent, right? Being able to, you know, uncover or have them to even just do it as an exercise. What is the thing you're afraid of? What's the fear? Are you fear
Mm-hmm.
of success? Are you
Mm-hmm.
fear of rejection? Are you fear of
Mm-hmm.
judgment? Like, what is it? And then what
Mm-hmm.
is it you want?
Mm-hmm.
And then it could be what you want and get specific on it. And so that then we can then, okay, then we have something we can target.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
That's great.
yeah. So this concept of just, and so the piece about it though is if you are human, this is normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Totally.
work with executives, I work with all kinds of people. They all have war words, they all have head trash. And so noticing it, normalizing it, neutralizing it, how you can then stop that swirl. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker you can be in the space of, okay, let's see, what this, what the next thing is we continue to practice and roll
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally doing like neuroplasticity work, right? You're literally changing, right, someone's neural pathways there
Mhm.
because, like you said, we have these, biological, oh my God, predisposed, let's say, neuroscience based things that, are important. It was important to pay attention when, your local, person ate the red mushroom and then dropped dead, on the frozen tundra. It's like, note to self, like, don't eat the red mushroom, right? That's going to get
Yeah.
weighted pretty heavily, right? And so you're right. And the way these emotions show up, it's very interesting. I was talking to someone the other day and I was saying, fear, that for this person, fear makes, this is apparent, fear makes them not have a plan. Whereas anger makes them think they only have one way,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so if you can, and anger is actually can be a very helpful emotion because it's actually a priming emotion for action, right? When you're going to go to war,
Yeah.
right? Whereas, fear, like you said, you're creating that cortisol bath that is going to, for the most part, really kill any kind of sense of curiosity,
Mm.
and that bridge, right, from war to win
Mhm.
is very much, I think, about being more au naturel and leaning in and mitigating, right, some of the war room thinking or the junk
Right.
that you said, and allowing that person to just be open, just be curious about what
Mm.
that could look like.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you work with, I know you, of course, you work with young adults, but I think it's super cool that you work with C-suites and executives because you get to see the trajectory of the young adult to that journey or vice versa.
Mhm.
And I bet there are what are called fixation points where you see even a seasoned leader regress and
Mm.
sound, like a 20 something year old and vice versa because, I always say to people like you could take a rock from outside and drop it on your foot, right? And it'll still hurt, right?
Yeah.
The past didn't necessarily
Yep.
go anywhere if you haven't addressed it. So that's really neat. That is really neat. And what do you feel the role? Because you talked a little bit about how parents can help unpack this, and thinking of you having a 15-year-old who I'm sure thinks you know nothing. At least if it's maybe you know something. But I have a 15-year-old as well, and so how. And I'm struggling always with flying at the right altitude, even though I'm a
Mm.
parenting expert and and have a parenting program, but there's a helpful and unhelpful way. So how do you see the role of parents coming in to try to say, hey, they're not probably going to use war room and win room concepts per
Yeah.
se. They could, though. It's actually a great one. They certainly can solicit you. But what do you see as a helpful just tact and tone or approach,
Yeah.
a way a parent can get in there just to help a young adult that could be really stuck?
It's funny because when you're a kid, you think your parents have it all. That's just it. So when you're a kid, you think your parents know nothing, but like there's sort of this
Hmm.
underlying assumption that you like they kind of have it figured out.
Sure. Totally.
And so it's funny, I remember when I was young and my mom, when I would ask her stuff, I would ask her, questions about what I should do. I was a super shy kid.
Mm-hmm.
And she would say to me, Jamie, you're smart. I trust that you know the right thing to do. And it's weird that I remember that. Well, it's not weird, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember that. And I remember, like, years later saying to her, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
actually
Mm-hmm.
helping me to build self-trust.
Sure.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges, right? Where we have so many people that are focused on everybody else's, like they want to go,
Mm-hmm.
this is why they're consuming everybody else's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So because there's a
Mm-hmm.
lack of self-trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I do with my kids is that, and I remember specifically, with my daughter, um, she had a real big back injury, and it made it that she had to shift her, like she couldn't do with her sport anymore. She was a
Mm-hmm.
highly, competitive gymnast, and she hurt her back. And
Rough.
going through, yeah, she couldn't do it anymore because it just would have, it was recommended that she wouldn't. And I remember, talking with her through that transition, because that's any different than like your kid doesn't get into the, college, or they don't get into grad school.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
Mm-hmm.
get the job interview. They don't this,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But encouraging your kids to like let them know that this is, the path is, that there's a path for them, and like
Mm-hmm.
highlighting,
Mm-hmm.
what their strengths are.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I often say is, you're my first 15-year-old. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm figuring it out here with you. We're
Mm-hmm.
figuring it out together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like, I don't have the answers.
Right.
I'm here to help support you with figuring it out. We're going to
That's
figure it
awesome.
out together.
Yeah.
So I just, I offer that as a way for parents to say that to their kids, like, we're working this together. We're not know-it-alls, we're learn-it-all. We're learning this,
Mm-hmm.
day by day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The thing about the gifts I think your mom gave you, like you said, is allowing you to have self-efficacy, agency, and trust yourself. And again, there's a way to do that that sounds very detached, like "Pfft, I don't got time for this,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
And I'm over here working 90 hours a week, and I'm whatever, and flying at the wrong altitude. I use altitude a lot with families. I have a lot of families that are part of the Four Peaks Parents Program that are super aloof, that are flying at 30,000 feet, and they're exporting parenting onto the nanny
Yeah.
and 85 other folks. And then there's other folks that are like, right, creating compression because they're in the weeds and not allowing their child to, right, fail forward and face
Right.
today, right? So
Yes.
I tend to have these aloof or enmeshed, kind of dynamic, and within the same family if it's a double parent household. But I love that she was there, to kind of witness, but also inspire and remind you, right? Help you remember
Mm.
that you have within you, right? So much wisdom, tools, chutzpah,
Right.
resiliency, what have you. And it sounds like you're doing a similar thing with your daughter, but maybe a little more of a coaching role, coming alongside her and accompanying her, which is really nice.
Mhm.
And I struggle with this at times, but I've been working really hard with my 15-year-old. And there's actually an earlier podcast episode called this, which is it's being the lighthouse, not the captain, and which that's just been super helpful for me. It's like so obvious, like duh, but like not being the captain of the ship
Yeah.
per se,
Yeah.
but now being the lighthouse,
Mhm.
and being like, there's some rocks you might want to slow down, but also yeah, like there's some, I don't know, good boating analogy. So, but there's some open water, like go hit it. One of the things I thought about when you were talking earlier about shifting to the win room, I just like that idea of like asking someone like, what is that?
Yeah.
Because then it's a tangible thing,
Mhm.
and an exercise that you could totally steal, that I don't even know where I learned this, because at this point in my career, having read so many books and
Yeah.
podcasts, I don't know who I'm even robbing from, but it's called a jealousy map. And I'll have young adults identify, and it could be anyone, it could be parents too, 5 people they're jealous of, and for the right reason. And I always say jealousy as a feeling we tend to associate in a negative way, but it's actually just a roadmap. Like, why are we jealous of this person and for what reason? And then what do we want to ostensibly have? Maybe it could be more freedom, it could be more money, it could be just more happiness, it could be more creativity. So I love that. Speak to how you help that person really define what the win room is, right?
Yeah.
So they can get out. Because I think, yes, it's great that you're increasing their self-awareness to catch those archaic war room thoughts and or behaviors and or psychologies, let's call it, right? But how do you kind of help them make that jump and then begin to feel it, smell it,
Right.
touch it, if you will?
Yeah, well, it is like a practice because like the war room
Mm-hmm.
never goes away. It's a
Mm-hmm.
practice, like building a mental muscle.
Mm.
That when you start to catch it, and then where do you go over here? And what I do is it's basically data. So when I say data, like for
Mm-hmm.
example, I typically, and I'm actually happy to give a tool to your audience if
Yeah,
they want to take an assessment
cool.
where they can identify their strengths, but also what I do is like help them identify and get down very clear on their core values, so what they believe in, what
Mm.
they stand for. And so the idea is that what and then the one other one, I do a variety of exercise, but then like this
Mm-hmm.
third thing is, reach out to people and say, I'm doing, an exercise. I value your feedback. What are the first three words you'd use to describe me? Or
Mm.
working with me if it's a young adult later
Mm.
in a career that you describe
Mm-hmm.
me. And so what you do is you get data from outside people about how they see
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And so all
Mm-hmm.
this data, right? Like your strengths, your values, what people say about working with you. That's all a way that we can help you to visually see it because you can't like embody it because our brains our brains are wired to ignore the things we're good at and emphasize the things we're not good at because we forget that the things that we're uniquely good at other people aren't, and so we minimize them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to pull out and help people to see the things that they're uniquely good at so that they can anchor in those.
I love that. That's great.
So it's making that shift, and then it's actually using that as a way, as a tool, a reminder of all this data that shows that when you start to get in that war room or like thinking I'm not good enough, there's all this data here that is like, no, this is what you're good at. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not
Mm-hmm.
only, it's not only your own, but it's other people's. And then compounding that. So this is actually a simple exercise, and I just did this with a bunch of executives last week.
Cool.
I would created wind jars. And so
Okay.
they have wind jars, and they, on the pieces of paper, they're writing down like the things that are they're good at, as people
Sure.
they're putting it on the pieces of paper and they're like putting it in the jar, putting it in the jar. What's something that you've accomplished this year that was very
Mm-hmm.
challenging? Like my daughter in her wind jar is like, I was able to pivot and find a new sport. I got through that, right?
Awesome.
So
That's huge.
all the things that you were able to accomplish, to go back and point to and go, nope, I've done this. So I can now build upon this. My brain wants to tell me I can't, but I know I can. And what
Right.
are the things like, so that's just like a one example of how you
Oh,
can do it.
that's a great exercise.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's people are like, that
Yeah.
sounds like, what? It sounds like something you do in fifth grade. I'm like, but that's the
It,
point.
but that is the point. I mean, because again, think about, okay, so I'll go with your daughter for a second. This is something I say a lot to anyone, but definitely parents that are part of the Four Peaks Parents Program. Is I say, we have to keep our identities small because a lot of times as parents, or just even anyone, adult, young adult, they could have an identity. I'm a coder. Perfect example. I'm a coder. I'm going to coding, right? Well, I don't know exactly. I'm not saying I'm not the expert on is coding going to be gone completely, but what I'm reading and hearing is AI is coming for coders, right? So your daughter, think of her identity, right? I always say keep your identity small because if our identities are small, I'm not saying values, identities, we can pivot. So your
Mhm.
daughter was a gymnast. That was a big identity.
Mhm.
That got taken from her.
Yes.
She then felt diffuse.
Mhm.
She had a sense of nothingness, right? However, if she can keep gymnast a little smaller, but athlete, right, in there as well,
Mhm.
right, and keep active, I don't know what else, active, physically active, wellness,
Mm-hmm.
those are identities too.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than being the triathlete,
Right.
and then something happens, you can't be a triathlete. Well, you're still an athlete.
Yeah.
You're still an active person. You're still a leader. You're still in tune with your body, right? You can transition. What is she doing now, by the way?
She's a pole vaulter.
Okay. That does not sound like conducive to her back. Oh, I mean, what is going on? I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
If you think about, well, I know if you
No, no, no. It's
ask
probably no.
that, yeah, no,
She's not. If you would have said a question, I would have filed Department of Children and Families again. I'm just kidding.
it's a
No,
different bending. It's not, it's,
no, no. It's
yeah,
all good.
yeah,
I'm totally joking. I think that's awesome. I love that she's. I mean, that's even cooler. That tells me how badass she really is, right? That she's not going into like whatever. Not that archery or something wouldn't be cool, but I mean, there's a contact aspect to pole vaulting that's super badass.
mm,
So her identity now in pole vaulting is important, or pole vaulter, but it's more important that she has an identity again as an athlete, as someone in tune with her body, as has this perspective of my body can do all these cool, badass things,
yeah,
because then she can hike, she can do yoga, she can, do whatever. Maybe she's not going to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but that's okay. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So that idea of yes, remembering the wins and focusing on kind of a gain versus gap mentality,
yeah.
that's huge. That's
Even,
huge. And again, there's
mm, yeah.
so much psychology there.
And
Good
it's
psychology.
like the foundation, and this is why I say like everything you do is building upon the next. And so in
Mm-hmm.
her example, and this is why I love sports and I kind of tie everything into sports, that what I do, because it's about practice. And
Mm-hmm.
like we getting us back to practicing in every, like that philosophy of like we're just practicing to get better and figure it out. But the reason why she's good at what she at pole vault is because of all of her foundation in gymnastics.
Totally.
And so
Totally.
the same thing with like your first job or like being an
Yeah.
athlete in school. Why does that make you more effective in the workplace? Because you have rigor, right? You,
Mm-hmm.
you know how to deal with failure, ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of like you're building upon everything, and so nothing is wasted. We're basically this culmination of every experience we've had, and we're continuing to
Mm-hmm.
sort of tweak and refine it. And I was actually talking this morning with a young adult who is really struggling with figuring out what to do next in her career, ironically, right before.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I said to her was, because she's like into sports and wants to either go to psychology or PA or this. And
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
challenge we have today is, when you and I went to college, there was like how many majors? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's like 47,000 majors.
No, I agree.
There's too many options.
There
So it's
is.
overwhelming because they feel like they have to pick the path. And I was explaining, like, I first, when I, and first in my career, I mean, if you looked at my career path, like
Mm-hmm.
all over the
Mm-hmm.
place, but I really wanted to be in sports. And if I think about, like, I started in sports and like sports marketing or sport, I want to be like a sports reporter.
Mm-hmm.
But if I think now how that compounded effect of everything I've done, but now in my own business, what do? I apply lessons and practices from
Totally.
sports in
Totally.
how I coach. So it's like this idea that you can be an athlete or you could be whatever you are, and how do you apply it? And using that is like, it's like part of you, but it's not all of you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's so important, is because I also have a number of parents will come to me and they're like, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do with my kid. Like they
Mm-hmm.
were a top football player, or they were
Mm-hmm.
this or that, and then they got injured." And
Mm-hmm.
it's like their entire identity.
Well, that's yeah, that's the point we were just making,
Yeah.
right? What are the habits,
Yeah.
right? What are the habits that they need to
Yes.
keep large? I mean, if you can keep habits large and identity small, you're going to be that much more transferable.
Yeah.
Which is great. I love the piece too about just like you have a really nice way of just making things simple and taking the complex and making it simple.
Yeah.
And for that client of yours, I can completely identify so many of the parents that I work with. Of course, there might be mental health and substances that caused an interruption, or just other failing to launch kinds of things where they're stagnating. What was the first seed though? It's like the mattresses, right? What is that? Oh my God, the thing with the mattresses and the princess and the pea, that
Oh,
story, where she can't sleep because there's a little pea under the mattress. The original pea for a lot of those young adults, that may or may not have morphed into chronic, cannabis dependence or alcoholism or problematic drinking or just stagnation, might have been neurodivergence, might have been that they're ASD and they're masking and we're struggling on the social side. It might be that they have ADHD and we're struggling on the executive functioning side. It might be that they went to college because they thought this was, again, their identity and the perfect major, and then the experience was so much more boring or banal or just more traditional than they thought, or less creative, and then they dropped out. That's a lot of the families I work with. But what I like about what you're trying to do with this young woman is, again, like, keep it simple, stupid, chunk it down. Like, let's take little micro bites, micro steps, micro actions, and not try to think necessarily about the 30-year trajectory, because, again, your career is, like you said, it's circuitous, and that's most successful people, and you've been amalgamating skills along the way. And I love that idea of everything's compoundable. It's not wasted, right? And it actually informs, who you are. Are you seeing, and it's okay if you're not, but, I see so much heavy doting, if you will, from the parent side. I mean, are you seeing that in the early career where young adults have to basically create separation and push back a bit from their parents' story or the shadow that the parents have cast upon them? Because a lot of the families I work with, they are casting a big shadow, and they're having a hard time seeing their own child within that shadow and allowing that child, right, to become whatever that version of their becoming is. Are you seeing that as well in terms of early coaching?
Well, I do. I mean, I see it as the kid is in a path because their parents told them to be. And like they're not happy, but they, like, the parents, said that this is the path you should take, and so then they just are following this path, and then don't know why they're miserable. And I think so many parents, I know you and I had a conversation about sports, but I think so many parents are parenting out of how it about their own ego and what they think will look good on the outside, not about what it actually is good for their kids on the inside. So it's more about the bumper sticker on the back of the car than their kids' actual, excitement about their life or what they're studying or what direction they're going in. And I think that's a real challenge. I mean, the number of, I'll just use the athletic example. A number of parents that I've talked with where their kid, like, it was all about their kid getting the scholarship. And then what happens when their kid gets the scholarship?
Sure.
They don't want to do it.
Right. Or does drugs or has an injury or gets burnt out, or it's crazy. I mean, that's even just a funny aside. Half those parents didn't play those sports and don't even know what it is to be a D1 or D2 athlete. It is a full-time job. And again, if you have someone who is already struggling just to keep their head above water or has, had to work. So I love the, I'm going to steal the win room a lot. I love that because there's also a piece in there. I bet you do an amazing job of having someone, close their eyes even for a hot second and just kind of like get in touch with, in addition to their values, which I love, in addition to them catching themselves being good. And what did you call it? The wind jar or something? Wind jar?
Put them in the wind jar, yeah.
Wind jar. But even just like taking their internal temperature, even just a body scan, like I do this all the time. I'll just be like, close your eyes, and just like, where are you at? Just like, where are you at right now? I did this the other day with a young adult, and he's like, I just feel like I have a rock in my chest. And I was like, what size? We talked all about the size of the rock, the feeling of the rock. I was like, by next week, I want you to have a rock. Sure enough, he's got a big ass rock that looks like a freaking comet, by the way. And I was like, is it a high rock day or a heavy rock day, a low rock day today, a medium? Where are we at? And it's just a nice thing. And then I was saying, like, you're going to keep that rock, believe it or not. I want you to put it on your desk. And rather than turning away from it and reviling, having like, a negative relationship with it, realize that's just in you. It's there right now. It's kind of barking. It's kind of loud, but it's up to us to make contact with it and kind of heal right through that process, and then still choose right the next courageous action. but you're doing so much great work. It's beyond, of course, there's an end to it, right? And people are getting jobs, or they're getting a better promotion. And I know you work, which feel free, please, to speak to. I want you to have opportunity to sell your wares. You have so many amazing offerings when you're working, of course, with leaders as well. So you're helping people win, of course, in their careers, but you're really helping them win, right, in terms of
Right.
their life, changing just their overall experience of themselves on a day in and day out basis. I bet your clients walk, a little bit taller, and the shoulders are a little bit
Yeah.
lower, and the chest is out more by the end of the work. So it
Yeah.
must be incredibly rewarding and
It's
satisfying.
it's very rewarding when you teach, like you show them something. Like I just got right before our call, I got a message from a chief marketing officer that I
Hmm.
work with about, I helped her with her presentation, and how people came up to her after, and how they noticed how different she was, and how she
Mm,
showed up, and
mm,
her confidence in embodying who she
mm,
was. And so I get these messages like all the time, and I just love it. I mean, this is what I do. But I wanted to share the example of the being in the how what we do with the win room is, I just did this with this
mm.
whole class of seniors in college. And so what we do is we have them identify their war words, like I'm not smart enough, nobody,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
then they define what they want, what their goals are. And then
mhm.
I have them stand up and they step into the war room, and how that
Cool.
feels, and how are they thinking about it, right? And so
Sure.
like feel that war room,
Yeah.
what's happening. And then I have them step into their win room and how that feels. And then like how, and typically what they report is that it feels lighter. They feel more
Totally.
energized, so they can, and so some also will say, I'm more comfortable in the war room.
Mhm.
It's more comfortable. It's not what I want, but it's
Sure.
so
Sure.
the reason why I do this though is so that I can help people to identify and understand that it's actually a choice.
That's 100%.
It's like, right? So nervous is war room, excited is win room. It's the same emotion
Mhm.
going from two
Mhm.
different places. And so
Mhm.
when you're able to do that and look at it as your own choice, this is your own choice of which direction you go in. Do you work against, right? Or do you work towards? Then you then can take personal accountability for your thoughts.
Totally. Totally.
And why this is so important is because our thoughts, our internal thoughts, are actually a reflection of how we then communicate. Like we haven't really got into this part, but like the interactions, how we are, what's our
Mhm.
energy and how we interacting with
Sure.
others.
Sure.
So the more that our thoughts are aligned to, not trying to be somebody else and who we are, we're more authentic. We're able to be more articulate. People trust us faster. Um, and so this concept of like you have a choice every moment of the day, like when somebody pisses you off, like you have a choice. Like you can actually hold on to that, or you can drop it and move towards where you know.
Mhm.
So um, that's how
That's
I
great.
do it with my clients. They're-
That's a lot of deep work. That's really good.
they do it very quickly though.
Yeah.
It's not like,
One thing,
yeah,
one thing you could hack on. I mean, it sounds like you're doing it already, but it's kind of fun to riff off each other. But one of the things you can have them do is do a pose,
yeah,
and like this might be, war room, kind of low energy,
yeah,
whereas this could be,
right,
wind room, right, Thomas or whatever, and then just because your body keeps the score.
yeah,
This is just what happens in terms of trauma. It's a multimodal task,
yeah,
so it's not just a cognitive thing, right? It's a cognitive, emotional, physiological, everything. And then what you're saying, which is 100% true, is how I show up is 100% indicative of which room I'm in.
yeah,
And it's actually, I'm either mismanaging my brand or I'm managing my brand,
yeah,
right? I'm either creating positive or negative exposures, which is great. And then the piece around not letting go, yeah, there's a lot of people that, want to hold on to their trauma because, that's really
well,
PTSD without them realizing it. And maybe actually, I always use, here's an easy one. I use this a lot with parents. I'll say, so think of a turtle. A turtle has a hard shell, and I don't know how heavy it is, and I should figure this out. But the turtle shell, the percentage of the shell to the body mass of the turtle is perfect.
mhm,
Think of an eagle; it has talons to be able to grab a fish, and then it has really thick skin that prevents it from being, bitten when it grabs a snake. But if those talons were too long, or the eagle's wings were just too short or too long, so nature is the perfect example of balancing defense and offense.
Mm.
And so that person is more defense than offense, right? And war room is more offense, which is exciting. But I like that you're normalizing. You're always going to have this defensive posturing
Oh yeah.
because this is fight or flight and it's neurobiology.
Yeah.
And on top of that, what's colored that is everyone's personal life experience, right?
Mm.
And that idea that you don't have to be in the defensive protective stance, which is where, of course, someone like myself can help that individual as well, and or a therapist and or a coach and or of course you. But with the parents I work with, I have parents that literally have Narcan their son, which is an opiate blocker, multiple times. That person almost OD'd 3-4 weeks ago. I have just started working with a woman whose son is will engage in pretty scary behaviors. He'll puff up and he'll be incredibly physically intimidating. And I was saying to her, what's so hard for her is psychologically we can't run toward and run away from the same thing at the same time. So she's in what's called a double bind.
Yep.
And what's so amazing about the parents I work with is they get to this place where they do, I always talk about like almost hovering above yourself, not dissociating. I'm not encouraging dissociation, but where we can almost see the Robert Frost poem, The Two Paths, where we could see the detached path or the reactive path or the enabling path. And then what's that new path? And what would that look like? And it's almost like we could freeze time and slow the fudge down and begin to choose the choice. And there are times we need to move toward that son who has been very intimidating and scary and puffed up and oppositional and engaged on safe behaviors, and give that person a hug, that child a hug, to create co-regulation and to say, I'm proud of you for just handling whatever that was. There's other times we have to say, I'm taking space. If you continue to engage in this behavior, I'm going to take space. There will be a natural consequence. It's not so bad right now, but if you continue, it will be far worse. Let's take this offline and talk more about it later. So to be in that place, the parents I work with, like you said, moment by moment, it's really hard and can be exhausting, but it's also so rewarding. And the families that complete my program, just like I'm sure the folks that complete your program, absolutely must feel more empowered and better able to, make the next right decision versus being trapped in, an outmoded way of operating, which is just so awesome, So what a gift that you give, your clients. It's really amazing.
It's thank you. And it's also like about like that detachment too, is like you can still support your child, but you like, and I get it, like it's your child, you feel your child, you want what's best for your child, but also knowing that they have to figure it out. Like it's your, so much of it is out of your control, and helping them to have personal accountability for where they are and where they want to go, and just letting them know that you trust that, they're going to make, the right decisions. And I know that there's so many so many different nuances to that, like that with the types of people that you work with, but also about like knowing that a lot of what people are carrying, like you can't carry everybody else's stuff. So it's like this, like the sort of dropping of it. But I did want to make a mention, because I wrote it down as you were talking. One tactic that a family can use, or this could even be somebody listening who has early, like a team. It could be a team of new people. It could be their kids' sports team. Maybe somebody who's listening to this, coaches. And I've done this with young sports teams. I've done this with teams of executives. What you can do is you can do it with a family around the table. Is you can either use a wind jar or jar in pieces of paper, like sticky notes, or you could do like this is one that I use sometimes. I use note cards, and what everybody does is, so we'll say for the team, right? It'd be like a sports team. Everybody on the team goes around and writes on the card for the person. So it would be on Thomas, you'd have your card, I have my card, everybody's a card, and everybody writes down one thing they appreciate about that person. And so you have a card, and actually when I do them with all the different companies I do them with, I have them all here. So I can look,
awesome.
I can look at them and what people appreciated about me. And so this is really, a way for, it's a positive pinch, but getting to like a really simple practice that,
Mm-hmm.
you could do it as a team in any situation. Like I said, a family as a team, a sports team as a team, a work
Mm-hmm.
team, so
Mm-hmm.
that other people have to think and then really tell you what they see in you. And
Yeah.
then it creates, connectiveness, and sort of people are often, surprised. And then you start to see these commonalities as well. And just a way to, like, we're wired to, we're so conditioned in everything, right? To be, what do we get feedback on? The things we're not good at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how do we
Mm-hmm.
fill that win
Mm-hmm.
space?
I
Because
love it.
yeah, so I just want to
Yeah.
offer that as a
Yeah.
very quick technique. Like, all you need is a
Yeah.
note card.
Yeah. And to just again reinforce, and I know you know all this, but you are changing and resetting the dynamic of, obviously, of course, that person's own relationship with self, but also you're changing the culture of that team or that family or that leadership team. And so, you are really changing, right, and resetting the dynamics, which in essence, right, germinates and compounds all these positive wins. And I think that example, the win jar, moving from the war room to the win room, you're speaking about helping families to, provide support and tutelage when solicited or when asked for, but at the same time, not right. Hover, support, coach, be the lighthouse, don't be the captain. You're just an amazing guest, and I would love for you to, quickly shout out how folks can reach out to you if they want to learn more about, of course, all the great work you do. And correct me if I'm missing anything, but on a corporate level as well as a one-to-one level,
Mhm.
and working with teams, right? Working with anything from C-suites to an early professional. And if anyone really wants to get in the win room and better manage their war room, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, I do primarily LinkedIn. So you can just look
Okay,
me up, Jamie Diglio, on LinkedIn, or you
cool,
can go to thewinroom.com. That's my
cool.
my website.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from people, hear what resonated, with what we talked about today, and yeah, just have a conversation. So I love meeting really interesting people. That's how I met you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm-hmm.
realized that
Mm-hmm.
we have so many
Mm-hmm.
common
Mm-hmm.
values, and why we do what we do.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough. And again, I am already taking stock of maybe being a little. I was at my son's soccer game yesterday, and I took notes, which he actually. I say, do you want me to just say you had a good game, or do you want my feedback? And he will say, I want your feedback. So I had a bunch of positive feedback and some constructive feedback. But I'm thinking about yesterday's game. It was probably 50-50, and I'm going to work pretty hard to make that 70-30 at his next game on Thursday, or 80-20, irrespective of how he plays. And I'm definitely going to steal the win jar for the Miller household. And of course, I love the positive praise or positive pinch cards. So
Yeah.
you offered so much value here today, and I really appreciate it. And it's pretty obvious, I'm sure, to anyone watching or listening that Jamie will really help if you have a young adult get the heck out of their head and get busy in their feet and start just taking steps and chunking down, right, those big, hairy, audacious goals without being overwhelmed. And as a parent, even if you're, struggling as well in your own career, or not necessarily struggling, but thinking of the next act,
Yeah.
she's a great resource. So thank you so much for joining us. And for any parent out there who is not already on the newsletter, please, in the show notes, go sign up for the newsletter. You'll get free evidence-based parenting tips, tools, strategies right to your inbox. Also, if you are clearly struggling with a young adult or a teen, and mental health, addiction, just could be any kind of disruptive behaviors, or making you lose sleep, and you're on an emotional roller coaster and you need a supportive guide and coach, please book a discovery call. It's totally free, and we can talk about whether it's the right fit for you to join the Four Peaks Parents Program. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye.